Once, the world was but a dark and endless sea. No sun, no sky, only stillness stretching forever. And from that void, Ra, the mighty sun of the cosmos, arose, blazing with all the light and power that would give shape to creation. From his brilliance, life bloomed, and where his rays kissed the deep, the winds stirred. And so came Shu, the god of the air, and Tefnut, goddess of rain. Together, they stretched the horizon, giving form to the land, lifting Geb, the earth from the dark waters. And from above all, Nut, the sky stretched far. In the fertile breath of their union, the earth gave birth to men. The gods filled the heavens, each with a purpose. Osiris, great and wise, ruler of life and harvest. Isis, his queen, keeper of wisdom and ancient ways. But in the shadows of their light, Set lurked. Chaos in the form of a brother's jealousy. Destruction woven into his very being. And it was he who brought down Osiris with treachery, splitting his body upon the earth, casting his soul to the afterlife. But where Set sought to destroy, Isis arose to restore, mending the pieces of her king, her brother, bringing him to the realm of death so that he might rule as lord of the underworld. From Osiris's death and rebirth, the legacy of the gods was sealed. His son, Horus, would rise on the wings of vengeance and peace. And through him, the first pharaohs were born. More than men, these kings stood with the gods, divine rulers. Their words law, their gaze the will of the heavens themselves. It was from their hands that the land, the great land of Kemet, came into its fullness, with the great Nile River flowing through the southern mountains to the northern delta. This river, not just water, but a road for the gods, carried more than just life. It carried the pulse of the universe itself. It was our bloodline, from Ra's tongue to the soil beneath our feet. We knew this land as the Blessed Land, where crops flourished and temples rise beneath the ever-watchful eye of the gods. In the beginning, there was a division, the Red Land to the south, and the Black Land to the north. Each land ruled by kings of their own destiny. Like raging bulls, they fought long beneath the sky and above the river, vying for the rule of this kingdom. But the river, the eternal bond, saw that these lands would one day merge into one. And so it came to pass, through the strength of Narma, the vulture and the cobra, the two lands were united, their people no longer divided, but joined as one beneath a single crown. For years, the kingdom flourished. The river was full, the earth rich, and the temples tall. The pharaohs, god-kings, raised monuments of stone and prayer, and the pyramids rose, ever so great, to ensure that the gods resting eternally would be seen by all beneath the heavens. But the gods, while mighty, were fickle, and their blessings were never guaranteed. Their favored kings built monuments to life and death. The great Khufu, whose pyramid towered higher than a mountain, and the wise Djoser, whose step pyramid was the first to challenge the heavens. But there came times when the river did not yield. The fields grew dry, and hunger took hold, and with it a sickness among the kings. Not all pharaohs were wise, nor were they always guided by the hands of the gods. Discontent among the people rose like the desert winds, burning through the fields. The sacred river, once a calm vessel for prosperity, now grew turbulent with anger of those forgotten. The pharaohs who ruled with clay hands ignored the cries of the people. I, the son of the fields, have witnessed this hunger. It gnawed at the heart of the land like a shadow, ever ready to consume. The time of glory seemed distant, when the pyramids shone bright and men still revered the gods. The river that once brought life threatens to carry our bones downstream toward some unknown future. And that is when he arrived. There are days when the very air seemed to tighten, as though the land itself had caught its breath and is waiting for something to happen, something that cannot be undone. In those days, the signs began. At first, small and fleeting, but steadily growing, relentless as the Nile itself. The animals, those who would graze lazily at dawn or sing their songs in the dark, began to behave in unnatural ways. The birds soared, their cries twisted with dissonance, circling in patterns not known to nature. The earth trembled in small bursts, a strange quaking that seemed born of the river's depths and not the feet of men. The soil itself spoke, cracking beneath our sandals in warning. The villagers began to dream, not of their ancestors, not of the gods. Instead, their sleep was filled with nightmares, terrible visions of darkness that consumed the stars, of strange faces in the horizon, smiling without kindness. The temple fires burned weakly, as though the gods themselves were tired of keeping watch, and still there was nothing. Just the ever-growing feeling that something stirred just below the surface. It was not long before his followers came. They were as strange as the omens that preceded them, wrapped in tattered cloaks and shrouds. They carried with them no words of introduction, no blessings, no explanation. They simply arrived in growing numbers, appearing like ghosts in the distance. Their speech was cryptic, their eyes shadowed. They set up camp just on the edge of our village. A low murmur echoed from their gathering, but there was no song, no prayer to soften the air. A coldness surrounded them, a pull we could not fight. Our village priest, proud and holy in his duties, was called to confront them. But when he returned, it was not the same man who had left. His words were jumbled, lost to the winds. When he spoke, his voice did not carry the weight of the gods, only trembled. He was left broken, unable to answer any question but this one. "There are no men," he whispered. The days turned darker, the nights longer, colder. And then, on an evening that felt both ordinary and far too strange, a procession. We heard nothing but the sound of their feet upon the earth. A line of dark figures emerged from the horizon, lit only by the dim light of distant torches. They moved as one, never rushing, yet never slowing. And at the very front of this procession was a figure, a man, a being beyond the pale of flesh. His skin was darker than the men of Nubia, darker than the deepest pools of the Nile, darker than the space between the stars, more shadow than man. He moved like one born of the gods, not of men. He was unlike any king we had known. No crown upon his head, no Wa scepter, nor Heka and Nakaka marked his reign. Yet, in his walk, in the way the earth itself seemed to bow beneath his weight, there was no doubt. This was a ruler. No mortal could command such presence. This, we thought, is what a pharaoh must be. More than king, more than man. He came not to be welcomed, but to be obeyed. His gaze swept the village, and in that moment, it was as though we all shared one mind, bound to his will. And so, as if bewitched by forces far beyond our grasp, we followed him. The people, so humble before their gods, followed him, not as worshippers, but as children caught in some mighty dream. We moved as if pulled by strings, uncertain whether it was awe or fear that moved our limbs. And as the world shifted around me, I no longer knew the weight of time. The sun rose before me, then hid itself once, twice, 1,000 times. I tried to count, to grasp, but the days, or what could be called days, slipped through my fingers like dust from an ancient tomb, scattered into nothingness. The winds blew across the sand in directions I could no longer fathom. The world twisted, yet I walked on. My steps carried me across this land, not of men, but of something other, something that did not breathe, but loomed over everything. And then, just as quickly, the moment was lost. The sands beneath me trembled, and when I awoke, there was no memory of where I had come from. Only this vast desert, stretched far as the eye could see, endless and empty. Yet the crowd was endless as well, standing there in stillness, as if carved in stone, as if time did not touch them. I could hear no sound, nothing from the mouths of the people before me, their gazes. They were all fixed on the sight ahead, their faces blank, their souls ensnared in an eerie trance. Before them loomed what could only be called a temple, though it was unlike any temple of Kemet I had ever known. It was a windowless edifice, a place where no light could penetrate. Yet from within came an unholy radiance, a shining, blasphemous thing that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was a place where shapes and forms did not obey our world. A massive, towering pyramid loomed at the center, more grand than the once great pyramids of Khufu and Djoser, rising higher to the height that no man should ever gaze upon. The winds themselves seemed to avoid its peak, like even the heavens feared to touch it. The very stones seemed alive, crawling beneath your feet, as if the earth itself had been summoned to shape it. The edges of the pyramid were sharp, more like blades of a god's weapon than the work of men. The ancient stones throbbed with a dark energy, reaching upward like the fingers of the dead, clawing at the sky. How could it hold such form? How could it rise so high? It should not exist, yet here it was, looming. And before it, I could see the temple. Those towering, twisting columns shaped not by craftsmanship, but by something older, more grotesque. Not stone, not even bone. These twisted spires curved and contorted into shapes beyond understanding, as if they themselves were screaming silent warnings in a forgotten tongue. Blue, flickering flames emerged from the gaps, impossibly cold in their light, casting shadows that moved against the grain of the world, stretching and bending as though the very air itself sought to leave this place. The sky above was a cacophony of wonders, a vast, unending filament pulsing with countless stars that flickered in every hue. Blinding and dark, all at once. Shapes, strange, indecipherable, danced across the sky, twisting in patterns that made no sense, but stirred a gnawing, primal knowledge at the back of my mind. The stars themselves shifted and wriggled like the bodies of worms in the depths of the earth. The shapes that flashed through the heavens, there were no names for them. No minds of men had ever dreamed of such patterns. Constellations twisted, circular, spiraling, expanding, contracting, only to fold inward again like the universe was breathlessly evolving, never at rest, as if the sky itself was alive, watching, observing, waiting. As I stood there, my body frozen under the weight of it all, I could feel the sands of the earth shifting with something deeper, something wrong. Then, from beyond the columns, through the void, came him. The man, his presence pushing against the air itself. His robes hung heavy about him like those of a pharaoh. But this was different. This was not like the kings of earth. This was something other. He held not as one of the gods, but as one above them. A ruler. No, the ruler. It wasn't as though the crowd around him bowed in reverence. They cowered, hushed as if drawn into submission with an invisible force. Their necks bent and lowered, too deep, toward him as if they had no power to keep their bodies upright before the immense weight of his being. My heart raced. I could not breathe. His gaze, a gaze blacker than his skin, held me in place, as it did with all of them. There was awe, yes, but something deeper, something more haunting, ran beneath that awe. That man raised his hand to me, calm, deliberate, like a master sculptor summoning life from the stone. His fingers outstretched, their motion eerily graceful, almost divine. My arm, seemingly beyond my control, rose in answer, trembling as though drawn by an unseen force. It was not mere movement. It was creation, raw and undeniable. The crowd turned as one. Their faces, emotionless yet intense, seemed carved by the same artist. Their hollow stares fixed on our silent connection. In that moment, the air thickened with reverence. For the briefest instant, it felt as if the heavens themselves leaned down, pausing to witness this quiet act of ascension. Then, as though he had willed it, the crowd began to shift. Their forms moved with eerie precision, opening a narrow, winding path that led toward the temple's darkened entrance. Though their hollowed eyes remained fixed on me, they seemed to part not for me, but for his unseen command. The space ahead carved with the inevitability of destiny. I hesitated, trembling beneath their unrelenting stares. The man lowered his hand and turned, his motion smooth as the flowing shadows, and began to walk. Without a word, he beckoned me forward, not with gesture, but with presence alone. Compelled beyond reason, I followed him. The crowd unmoving now, stood like sentinels on either side of the path, their faceless attention weighing heavy as my footsteps fell in rhythm with his. The air grew colder, sharper with each breath. My mind rebelled, screaming to turn back. But my body obeyed this unseen will, drawn as if by a string to the jagged portal ahead. With a man as my guide, I passed beneath its shadow. The stillness behind me replaced with an unearthly weight that pressed down upon my very soul. Inside, the weight of its presence overwhelmed me, drowning me in oppressive silence. Carvings of ancient black stone swirled across every surface, undulating in shapes that mirrored the revolting, inescapable feeling of rot inside my own being. Eldritch symbols covered every inch, a language known to no mortal. The walls seemed alive, vibrating with a hum so low it threaded through me, making my bones quiver. These carvings, these dreadful twisting patterns, were not the work of men, but of something older, far older. The stench of something wrong permeated the air. Something had touched this place long before me. In the center of the room, like a malignant heart of the temple, he sat. He was a figure of towering enormity. He sat upon a throne carved from stone that pulsed in time with the rhythm of the earth itself. His robe, red as a sunset flame, clung to his form, his feet hidden beneath the base of the bench. But I could hear them, the slow, deliberate clicks echoing off the stone as he shifted his weight. His features were sharp, smooth, almost unnaturally perfect. But there was no life in them. He was a thing of shadow and calm, and yet his presence seemed to violate all that is natural. He was taller than 3 men, perhaps taller than I could ever truly imagine. It was as if the room itself bent and broke to accommodate him. No hair, no beard, only a smooth, deathly skin, blacker than any darkness I had ever seen. His gaze, the little I could see of his regular, almost delicate features, held no warmth, no expression, save for the strange, cold authority that he exuded from every inch of his being. And in that heavy silence, I found the courage or madness to speak, and he spoke back. He spoke with a calmness that chilled me to my very core. His voice, low and unwavering, resonating as though it was carved into the air itself. Never raising his voice, yet carrying an authority so vast it crushed the remains of my will to resist. His words flowed like a river of shadow, quiet but unstoppable, revealing truths I wish I could unhear. He spoke of the endless void, of the infinite chaos that lies beyond mortal comprehension, of the foolishness of men clinging to their gods. He dismissed divinity as one might dismiss a fleeting breeze, calling it insignificant before the vastness of what truly is. The order that I had once believed in, the meaning I thought gave shape to my life, was nothing but an illusion. I dared to ask him his name. Something within me, a flicker of defiance rising against the shadowed abyss, forced the questions from my trembling lips, though I knew its asking might unravel my sanity. He answered unhurriedly, as though boundless time itself had coiled to hear his response. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 eons, each syllable dripping with the gravity of forgotten ages. He said he bore many names, names that coursed through the tongues of innumerable beings across innumerable realms. Some I recognized, a fleeting memory stirred at Thoth and Set. To some, he was the one with many faces, the haunter of the dark or the crawling chaos. To others, he was Ismut or Angra. And then, as if reaching into the depths of my very being, he spoke one final name, one that resonated so profoundly it seemed to fracture the fragile barriers of reality. Nyarlathotep! Foolishly, what such a being sought here in this barren place beneath the stars. His reply was both chilling and hypnotic. He spoke of the nature of mortals, their fragility, their ceaseless need to impose meaning upon a universe that has none. He spoke of entropy and inevitability, of how all things, minds, lives, empires crumbled beneath the weight of the true void. My gods, he said, were mere echoes, fleeting reflections cast upon the ever-changing surface of chaos. And then, with the slow certainty of a shifting star, he told me a truth buried beneath ages of silence. One of his fates had ruled this land once, not as a conqueror, not as a tyrant, but as a harbinger of wisdom beyond mortal reckoning. As Nephren Ka, the Black Pharaoh, he had sought to show the people of this land the true nature of existence, to pry open their blind eyes so that they might glimpse the vast and writhing tapestry of reality. He had spoken to them. As he spoke to me, they were afraid, and so they turned from him. They chose ignorance. They scoured his name from their records, chiseled his mark from their temples, and in their arrogance, they believed they had cast him away. But the void is not so easily denied. The messenger does not forget. He does not forgive. I dared to ask why he spoke to me, why he deigned to reveal these things to one so small, so transient. And then he revealed with a voice that carried both judgment and decree that he had chosen me out of the multitude to bear this tale. This, he said, was both my punishment and my reward. With a voice like the rustling of dead stars, he spoke his final promise. He would return. This land that had cast him out would know his name once more. The world that had chosen blindness would be made to see. All the lands of man would fall before his domain. He would not come as a conqueror, nor as a savior, but as the truth made manifest. And in the silence that followed, I understood. Nyarlathotep had never left. And soon all would know him again. Then he spoke no further. He did not move, nor gesture, save to raise one thin, elongated finger. He pointed silently and steadily toward the great pyramid behind me. I turned, my heart pounding, my vision blurred with fear. And then I saw it. From behind the pyramid emerged something monstrous. No, not monstrous, impossible. A being that defied all reason, all sanity. Its form shambled on 3 grotesque legs, each joint bending at sickening angles. Its torso, vaguely human, yet impossibly elongated. Each motion unnatural and wrong. Where its head should have been, there was a single writhing tentacle, undulating as though tasting the air. And in the center of its chest, where a man might bear a heart, there was a pit, a gaping infinite void that seemed to devour light itself. I wanted to scream, to beg, to pray, but no prayer could reach the ears of a silent cosmos. I knelt trembling before the messenger, the one who brings the truth. And so, I was to be his herald to humanity, not to share stories of wonder or revelation, but to deliver warnings of the truth, of the inevitability that awaited those who dared to gaze beyond the veil. And though it filled me with despair, I found myself speaking the words as if they were carved in my very soul. I could only say one thing. All hail Nyarlathotep, the messenger!